I stood in the elegant foyer of the Grand Plaza Hotel, adjusting my simple black suit, Armani, though they'd never recognize that. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the main ballroom where my father's retirement party was in full swing. After 35 years at Sterling Industries, James Anderson was finally stepping down as Chief Financial Officer. "Oh, look who decided to show up." My brother Michael's voice cut through the ambient noise. He stood blocking the ballroom entrance, champagne in hand, wearing what I recognized as a poorly fitted designer suit that probably cost 3 months of what he thought I made. "Hello, Michael," I said quietly, reaching for my invitation, the one they didn't know I had personally approved as chairman of the board. "This is a private event," he smirked, looking me up and down. "For successful Sterling executives and their families. Not for whatever it is you're doing these days." I suppressed a smile, thinking about the board meeting I'd just left, where we'd finalized the leadership transition that would be announced tonight. Michael had no idea that his comfortable position as vice president of sales was about to change dramatically. "I'm still family," I replied mildly. "And it's Dad's retirement." "Family." He laughed, the sound sharp with derision. "Family succeeds together. Family builds legacies. What have you built except disappointment? Still pushing papers at that consulting firm." If he only knew that my consulting firm was actually a shell company through which I'd orchestrated the gradual acquisition of Sterling Industries over the past 5 years. While he bragged about his vice presidency at family dinners, I'd been quietly buying shares, placing allies on the board and positioning myself for this moment. "Michael, is there a problem here?" Our mother appeared, elegant in her designer dress, diamonds glittering at her throat. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Oh, Emma. I didn't expect you to come." "Of course she came," Michael sneered. "Probably heard there was free food. How much are consultants making these days, sis?" "Enough for rent." I thought about my penthouse overlooking Central Park, and the 3 other properties I owned through various holding companies. "I manage," I said softly. "Well," my mother sighed, her voice dripping with familiar disappointment, "perhaps it's better if you don't come in. Your father's colleagues are here, board members. We wouldn't want them to feel uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable?" I raised an eyebrow. "You know what she means." Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is a celebration of success. Of everything Sterling Industries represents. You walked away from all that, remember? Refused the executive training program to find yourself, or whatever excuse you gave. I remembered that day clearly. 5 years ago when I declined their prescribed path to join their executive ranks. Not because I didn't want to be part of Sterling Industries, but because I saw a better way to transform the company. A way that required patience, strategy, and the willingness to be underestimated. "The new CEO is coming tonight," my mother added, checking her phone nervously. "The board's choice to lead Sterling into the future. We can't have any distractions." I smiled, thinking about the press release scheduled for tomorrow morning. "Yes, I heard about the new CEO. Quite the surprise choice, I imagine." "Not for those of us in the know," Michael puffed up importantly. "I've been part of the selection committee. Between us, I'm on the shortlist to be named executive vice president once the announcement is made." "Is that so?" I murmured, checking my own phone. A message from my assistant flashed. "Everything is in place. Board members are ready. Should I send in security?" "Look," Michael said, his voice hard. "This is your last chance to leave gracefully before I have security escort you out. This party is for successful people only. People who understand business, legacy, family loyalty." I looked at my mother, seeing no support in her carefully made-up face. "And what about family loyalty to me?" "You chose your path," she said stiffly. "Now please don't make a scene." As if on cue, a commotion started near the hotel entrance. Board members began arriving, their faces serious despite the festive occasion. Michael straightened his tie, ready to network. I typed a quick response to my assistant. "Proceed with the announcement." The next few minutes would change everything. 5 years of careful planning, of being dismissed and underestimated, had led to this moment. I adjusted my suit jacket one last time, feeling the weight of the chairman's speech in my pocket. Sometimes success isn't about being the loudest in the room. Sometimes it's about waiting for exactly the right moment to speak. And my moment was about to arrive. "Security," Michael called out, gesturing to the uniformed staff nearby. "Please escort my sister out. She was just leaving." I stood my ground, watching the board members file past. Each one nodded slightly in my direction, a gesture my family completely misinterpreted as pity. The atmosphere shifted suddenly as the hotel doors opened again. A buzz of anticipation swept through the foyer. The new CEO had arrived. Michael's face lit up with opportunistic excitement. My mother quickly checked her makeup in a compact mirror. Neither of them noticed my small smile as footsteps approached behind them. "After all," Michael said, turning back to me with one final sneer, "this is for successful people only." "Indeed it is," a new voice agreed. "Which is exactly why the chairman of the board should be here, don't you think?" The look on their faces as they turned around was worth every second of the past 5 years. Sometimes revenge isn't about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about letting them prove themselves wrong while you build something greater than they could imagine. And my building was just beginning. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's champagne glass trembled slightly in his hand as he stared at Thomas Bennett, Sterling Industries' outgoing CEO, who had just referred to me as chairman of the board. "There must be some mistake," my mother managed, her social smile cracking at the edges. She's just the majority shareholder of Sterling Industries," Thomas finished smoothly, "and the driving force behind our company's remarkable transformation over the past 5 years. Though I suppose she never mentioned that during your family dinners." I watched the color drain from Michael's face as the reality of the situation began to sink in. His grip on the champagne glass tightened until his knuckles turned white. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I'm on the selection committee. I've been in all the meetings about the new CEO and leadership structure." "All the meetings we wanted you to be in," I corrected him gently. "Though you might have noticed something if you'd spent less time bragging about your position and more time actually reading the quarterly reports." Thomas gestured and my assistant Sarah appeared with a leather portfolio. "Perhaps we should move this discussion into the ballroom? After all, the chairman needs to give a speech about the company's new direction." My mother's hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "Emma, darling." Her voice had shifted to the sugary tone she used when trying to manipulate situations. "Why didn't you tell us? We're family." "Family." I carefully removed her hand. "Like when you told the board I was emotionally unstable after I declined the executive training program. Or when Michael spread rumors about my failed consulting business to anyone who would listen." The portfolio Sarah handed me contained documents I'd been preparing for months. Organization charts, transition plans, and most importantly, the announcement of Sterling's new CEO. "Mr. Anderson," Thomas called out as we entered the ballroom. My father turned from his conversation with board members, his face freezing when he saw me. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, years of dismissal evident in his tone. "Michael, I thought you were handling the guest list." "Actually, James," Thomas said firmly, "your daughter is here to make an important announcement. As chairman of the board, it's her privilege to introduce Sterling's new CEO." The champagne glass finally slipped from Michael's grip, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. "Chairman," my father's voice cracked. "But that's impossible. The chairman is me," I finished quietly. "Has been for the past year, ever since my holding companies acquired controlling interest in Sterling Industries." The ballroom had become very still. Executives and board members watched the family drama unfold with barely concealed interest. My father's retirement party had just become something much more significant. "Those holding companies," Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "The ones that kept buying up shares. That was you?" I nodded, opening the portfolio. "Phoenix Ventures, Sterling Capital Management, and about a dozen others. All carefully constructed to avoid drawing attention while I rebuilt this company from the inside out." "Rebuilt?" My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Sterling Industries was perfect the way it was." "Perfect?" I raised an eyebrow. "The outdated technology, the bloated management structure, the declining market share? Is that your definition of perfect, Dad?" Thomas stepped forward. "Your daughter has done what none of us had the courage to do. She saw Sterling's potential and took action. Our stock price has doubled since she began implementing changes through her holding companies." My mother, ever the social survivor, attempted to salvage the situation. Well, of course she did. We always knew Emma had potential. Didn't we, James? Michael? But my father and brother stood frozen, watching as board members and executives began gathering around me, their respect evident in every gesture and word. The announcement, Sarah reminded me softly, nodding toward the podium set up at the front of the ballroom. I straightened my jacket and walked toward the stage, feeling the weight of every step. 5 years of careful planning had led to this moment. 5 years of being dismissed, underestimated, and excluded. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. We're here tonight not just to celebrate my father's retirement, but to announce Sterling Industries' next chapter. I paused, looking directly at Michael, who had always assumed he was next in line for leadership. It's my privilege to introduce Sterling's new Chief Executive Officer. The room held its breath. My father gripped his chair for support. Michael's face showed a desperate hope that somehow, despite everything, he might still be chosen. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right in ways they never imagined possible. And my proof was just beginning. Please welcome Sterling Industries' new Chief Executive Officer, Diana Martinez. A tall woman in an impeccable suit stepped forward from among the board members. She had been my mentor at the consulting firm, actually one of the most successful private equity firms in New York, and had helped orchestrate Sterling's transformation from the shadows. Michael's face contorted with shock and rage. But I was supposed to be executive vice president? I finished for him. That position has been eliminated in our new structure. In fact, Michael, we'll need to discuss your role in the company first thing Monday morning. Our father stumbled forward. You can't do this. I built this company. No, Dad. Grandfather built this company. You inherited it and maintained the status quo for 30 years while our competitors innovated and evolved. I'm simply bringing Sterling into the modern era. Diana took the podium, her presence commanding immediate attention. Under Emma's leadership as chairman, we've already begun implementing changes that have increased our market value by 200%. Our new structure will streamline operations, modernize our technology, and position Sterling as an industry leader for the next generation. I watched my mother's social instincts kick in as she realized where the power now lay. She began moving toward me, but I held up my hand to stop her. The time for family manipulations is over, I said quietly. This is business. The evening proceeded according to plan. Diana outlined our vision for Sterling's future while I watched my family's carefully constructed world crumble. Michael sat slumped at a corner table, emptying champagne glasses. Our father stood rigid, his retirement celebration transformed into a testament to his outdated leadership. Near the end of the evening, Thomas approached me with a knowing smile. Your father once told me you lacked business instincts, he mused. I suppose proving him wrong must feel satisfying. I watched my family across the room, my mother attempting to network with board members who now avoided her, my brother drowning his shock in expensive champagne, and my father sitting alone, staring into space. This isn't about proving them wrong, I replied. It's about proving myself right. Sterling Industries deserved better than nepotism and stagnation. Now it has a future. After the guests began departing, my father finally approached me. His face had aged years in one evening. Why? He asked simply. Why didn't you just take the executive training program? Follow the path we laid out for you. Because that path was about maintaining your control, not building a better company. I gathered my documents, preparing to leave. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. Monday. We'll be announcing the restructuring plan. You're welcome to attend, as a shareholder. As I turned to go, Michael stumbled over. You can't just throw away family loyalty. I paused at the door. Loyalty works both ways, Michael. You all chose your path 5 years ago when you decided I wasn't worth respecting. I chose mine. The difference is I chose to build something greater than personal pride. Diana joined me, car keys in hand. Ready, Chairman? I looked one last time at my family. The power dynamics of decades now completely reversed. The company car service will be discontinued next week, I informed them. You might want to arrange alternative transportation. Walking out of the Grand Plaza Hotel, I felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure. Success isn't about revenge, it's about vision, determination, and the courage to be underestimated while you build something extraordinary. Monday morning would bring new challenges, restructuring announcements, market reactions, personnel changes. But for now I had one last stop to make. "Take me to the office," I told Diana. "I want to review the transition documents again." She smiled knowingly. "Still the hardest worker in the room even after becoming chairman?" "Especially after becoming chairman," I corrected her. "Success isn't a destination, it's a responsibility." As our car pulled away from the hotel, I saw my family emerging, looking lost in their expensive clothes and shattered assumptions. They had wanted me to fit into their story of success. Instead, I had written my own. The city lights blurred past as we drove towards Sterling's headquarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that true success isn't about who you were born to be, it's about who you choose to become. In the end, they had kicked me out of a retirement party. I had given them a masterclass in business instead. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's excellence. I watched through the rearview mirror as my father finally got into his car, his shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. For a moment, my hand moved toward my phone, an old reflex to check if he was okay. But I stopped myself. "Second thoughts?" Diana asked, noticing my hesitation. "No," I said firmly. "Just remembering something my grandfather told me before he died. He said, 'Emma, sometimes the hardest part of leadership is knowing when to let go of the past to build a better future.'" Diana nodded. "Wise man. Is that why you kept his original desk in your office?" "Yes. And tomorrow, I'm having it moved to the company museum along with the original Sterling Industries sign. The past should be honored but not at the expense of the future." My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. "We need to talk. Family dinner Sunday." I typed a simple reply. "All discussions through official channels from now on. Your performance review is scheduled for Tuesday." Sometimes the hardest walls to break aren't made of concrete or steel. They're built of expectations, traditions, and the comfortable illusions we create about family. But once those walls come down, the view is infinitely clearer.
The mahogany-paneled walls of my father's study seemed to close in as he paced back and forth, his face red with anger. The evening sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the scene feel even more dramatic than it already was. "A startup?" He spat the word like it was poison. "You want to leave the family business for some tech fantasy?" My name is Michael Chen, and at 25 I was about to be disowned for daring to have dreams beyond running Chen International, the shipping empire my great-grandfather had built. "It's not a fantasy," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the tension knotting my stomach. "The shipping industry is changing. If we don't adapt to digital transformation..." Enough. My father slammed his hand on his desk, making the family photos rattle. For 4 generations, Chen International has operated the same way. We build relationships, we shake hands. We don't need fancy computers to tell us how to run our business. My mother sat quietly in a corner, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of careful neutrality. She hadn't said a word since I'd announced my plans to leave and start my own logistics technology company. "The world is changing," I tried again. "Look at our competitors. They're all investing in automation, AI-driven routing." "They're fools," my father interrupted, "chasing trends while we maintain tradition. Your brother understands this. William knows the value of our legacy." "Ah yes, William." My older brother, who had never questioned anything, who followed our father's every command without hesitation. "The perfect hair." "William doesn't understand innovation," I said. "He's too afraid to challenge anything." My father's face darkened. "And you think you know better? You think your little computer programs can replace decades of experience?" I pulled out my laptop, opening the presentation I'd spent months preparing. "Just look at the numbers. Our market share has dropped 15% in the last 2 years. Our operating costs are 30% higher than our competitors. If we don't adapt..." "Enough," he roared, slamming the laptop shut. "I won't hear any more of this nonsense. You have a choice, Michael. Either you take your place in this family and this company, or you leave. There is no middle ground." I looked at my mother, hoping for support, but she just stared at her hands. I had always been her favorite, the one who shared her love of books and ideas. But when it came to standing up to my father, she was always silent. "Then I'll leave," I said quietly. The room went still. Even the air seemed to freeze. "What did you say?" My father whispered, his voice dangerous. "I'm leaving. I've already secured seed funding. I have a team ready to..." "Get out." His voice was ice cold now. "If you walk out that door, you are no longer my son. No trust fund, no connections, no family name." I stood slowly, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "The family name won't matter when I build something of my own." "You ungrateful," he sputtered, but I was already walking to the door. "Michael," my mother finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper, "please think about this." I turned back one last time. "I have thought about it. For years. While you all were living in the past, I was planning for the future." My father's face was purple with rage. "You'll fail. Without this family, without our connections, you're nothing." I smiled, though my heart was breaking. "We'll see about that." That night, I packed everything I could fit into my car. My laptop, some clothes, and most importantly, the detailed business plans and prototypes I'd been developing in secret for the past 2 years. As I drove away from the mansion I'd grown up in, I glanced in my rearview mirror. My mother stood at the window, a pale figure in the darkness. She raised her hand slightly, a ghost of a goodbye. I didn't wave back. The first few months were harder than I'd ever imagined. The seed funding I'd secured, modest compared to what I could have had with family support, stretched thin as I built my team and developed our first prototype. Logitech Solutions wasn't just about making shipping more efficient. I wanted to revolutionize the entire industry, creating an AI-driven platform that could optimize routes, predict maintenance needs, and automate the countless manual processes that made traditional shipping companies like Chen International so inefficient. I rented a tiny office in a rundown building in Seattle's tech district. My team consisted of 4 other believers, programmers and logistics experts who shared my vision of dragging the shipping industry into the 21st century. "You really think we can compete with the big players?" Jake, my lead developer, asked one late night as we debugged our first major release. I looked at the Seattle skyline through our grimy window. "We're not competing with them. We're going to make them obsolete." 6 months after I left home, our first client signed on, a small regional shipping company tired of losing business to larger competitors. Within weeks, their efficiency increased by 40%. The success brought our first round of serious investor interest. I worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. Every time exhaustion hit, I thought of my father's words, "You'll fail." Those words became fuel. 1 year to the day after I'd walked out of my father's study, I received an email from my mother. The subject line read simply, "News." Inside was a link to an article about Chen International. The company had posted its worst quarterly results in 20 years. The stock was down 35%. At the bottom, she'd written, "Your father won't admit it, but you were right. Please come home." I deleted the email without responding. Instead, I channeled my energy into expansion. Logitech's client base grew steadily, each success proving what I'd known all along. The industry was desperate for innovation. 18 months after launching, we secured our series of funding, $20 million from venture capitalists who recognized the potential of our platform. The day after the announcement, William called. "Look, Michael," he said, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone. "You've had your fun playing entrepreneur, but it's time to come back. Father is willing to discuss terms." I laughed. "Terms? You mean surrender?" "Don't be dramatic. The family business is dying." I cut him off. "And you know it. But instead of adapting, you're all clinging to the past. We have traditions. Traditions won't save you when you're bankrupt." He was quiet for a moment. "You've changed, little brother." "No," I corrected him. "I've just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not." After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in my office window. I had changed, but not in the way William meant. I was stronger now, more confident. Success built on my own terms had given me something my family's wealth never could: belief in myself. 3 years after leaving home, Logitech Solutions had grown beyond anything I'd imagined in those early days. Our Seattle headquarters now occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown office building, housing over 200 employees. Our platform was being used by shipping companies in 12 countries, and our valuation had hit $500 million after our Series C funding. But success brought its own complications. Chen International is asking about our services again, Maya, my COO, said during our morning meeting. Third time this month. I looked up from the quarterly reports I'd been reviewing. Through official channels this time, or is my brother still trying to backdoor his way in? She smiled wryly. Both actually. William called 3 board members personally, and their tech department submitted a formal inquiry. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company that had dismissed my tech fantasy was now desperately trying to access the very technology I created. Same answer as always, I said. They can get in line like everyone else. And the line was long. Our waiting list included some of the biggest names in global shipping, all eager to modernize their operations. Chen International's stubborn resistance to change had cost them dearly. Their market share had dropped to less than half of what it had been when I left. Later that afternoon, I was reviewing acquisition offers when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Chen, your mother is here." I froze. In 3 years, I hadn't seen any of my family face to face. Our only contact had been through occasional emails from my mother and William's increasingly desperate phone calls. "Send her in." She looked older than I remembered, more fragile somehow. Her designer clothes hung a bit loose, and there were new worry lines around her eyes. "Michael," she said softly, "you look well." "What are you doing here, Mom?" She sat down carefully in one of my visitor chairs, taking in the view of Seattle's skyline from my corner office. "Your father is sick," she said finally. "Heart problems. The doctors say stress." I kept my face neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." "The company, it's not doing well. William is trying, but he's not equipped to handle modern business challenges," I finished, "because father never let him learn." She flinched. "We were wrong, Michael. About everything. Your father sees that now." "Does he? Or is he just desperate?" "Both perhaps." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to give you this." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "What is it?" "A proposal. The board wants to acquire Logitech. They're offering to make you CEO of both companies." I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet office. "They want to acquire us. With what money?" Chen International stock has lost 60% of its value in 3 years. "There were other assets," she said weakly, "family holdings." "No," I handed the envelope back unopened. "I didn't build this company to have it absorbed back into the family business. Michael, please, your father made his choice 3 years ago." I cut her off. "He chose tradition over innovation, pride over progress, William over me." Tears welled in her eyes. "He was wrong. We were all wrong. But this isn't just about your father anymore. There are thousands of employees at Chen International, families who depend on those jobs." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd made my new home. 3 years ago, I tried to warn him this would happen. I begged him to let me help modernize the company. He threw me out. "You're right," she said. "But does that mean all those people should suffer?" I turned back to her. "Open the envelope, Mom." She did, hands trembling slightly as she read the proposal. Her eyes widened. This is just a takeover. They're offering you nothing but the title." "Exactly. They still think they can control me." I took the proposal and dropped it in my shredder. "But I have a counter-offer." I pulled up a document on my tablet and handed it to her. As she read, her face paled. "This would mean a complete restructuring," I said. "Chen International becomes a subsidiary of Logitech. The entire board resigns, including father and William. We modernize everything. Operations, management, culture. No more dynasty, no more tradition for tradition's sake. Your father will never agree. Then Chen International will fail." I sat back down. "Those are the only options now, Mom. Evolution or extinction." She stood slowly, clutching her bag like a shield. "You've become hard." "No," I corrected her. "I've become successful. On my own terms." "I'll give him your terms," she said, moving toward the door. Then she paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 years ago." After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about legacy and change. My great-grandfather had built Chen International from nothing, just as I built Logitech. But somewhere along the way, my father's generation had forgotten that maintaining a legacy meant adapting, not just preserving. My phone buzzed, a text from William. Just heard Mother's report. You can't be serious with these terms. I typed back, completely serious. You have 48 hours to decide. Then I turned back to my work. I had built something too valuable to compromise, too important to sacrifice for family pride. The next move was theirs. The Chen International Board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a rainy Seattle morning. I hadn't set foot in their headquarters since leaving 3 years ago, but as I walked through the familiar marble lobby, I felt no nostalgia, only quiet determination. Mr. Chen, the receptionist said, doing a double take at seeing me. They're waiting in the main boardroom. I nodded, heading for the elevators. My team of executives and lawyers followed, each carrying tablets loaded with our proposal and implementation plans. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me, old men in expensive suits who had watched me grow up, who had dismissed my ideas, and who now sat facing the consequences of their resistance to change. My father sat at the head of the table, looking smaller than I remembered. His face was gray, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped his water glass. William sat beside him, jaw clenched tight. "Michael," my father said, his voice lacking its usual thunder. "Thank you for coming." I took my seat at the opposite end of the table, directly facing him. "Let's begin." For the next 2 hours, my team presented our restructuring plan in meticulous detail. The numbers were undeniable. Chen International's valuation had dropped to $200 million, while Logitech was now worth $2 billion. Our technology had become the industry standard, while their traditional methods were bleeding money. "This is highway robbery," one board member sputtered as we outlined the terms. "You want us to just hand over control?" "No," I said calmly. "I want you to save this company before it's too late. The choice is yours." William leaned forward. "And what happens to the Chen family legacy?" "The real legacy," I replied, "was innovation. Great-grandfather built this company by embracing new ideas, new technologies. Somewhere along the way, you all forgot that." My father hadn't spoken throughout the presentation. Now he looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. "You were right," he said quietly. The room went still. 3 years ago, you tried to tell me this would happen. I was too proud to listen." He pushed back from the table slightly. "Too afraid of change to see that you were protecting our legacy, not destroying it." William started to protest, but our father held up a hand. "Enough, William. Your brother built something extraordinary while we clung to the past. It's time to accept that." He turned to address the board. I moved to accept Logitech's proposal in full, including the leadership changes. The vote was close, but in the end, survival instinct won out over pride. By noon, the papers were signed. Chen International would become a division of Logitech Solutions, with a complete restructuring to follow. As the board members filed out, my father remained seated. I stayed too, sensing he had more to say. "Your mother told me something interesting," he said finally. "She said you've been quietly buying up Chen International stock for the past year, that you could have launched a hostile takeover months ago." I nodded. "I could have, but you waited." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to choose change. Real change doesn't work if it's forced." He smiled sadly. "When did you get so wise?" "When I had to build something on my own, without the family name to rely on." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of conflict and missed opportunities hanging between us. "I stepped down as CEO, effective immediately," he said. "The doctors say I need to reduce stress." "I know, it's in the agreement." He stood slowly, straightening his tie out of habit. Will you take care of them? The employees, I mean. Some have been with us for decades." "That was always the plan," I said. "We're not destroying Chen International, we're evolving it. Anyone willing to embrace change will have a place." He nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Your great-grandfather's watch. He wore it when he signed his first shipping contract." He placed it on the table. "It belongs to you now." I picked up the watch, feeling its weight. "Thank you." "No," he said, moving toward the door. "Thank you for saving us from ourselves." After he left, I sat alone in the boardroom where I'd once been told my dreams were worthless. Through the windows, I could see both company buildings, the classical architecture of Chen International and the modern glass tower of Logitech. My phone buzzed with a message from Maya, town hall meeting at 3 p.m. to announce the merger. Both companies' employees, You ready? I looked at the watch in my hand, then at the Seattle skyline that had witnessed my journey from outcast to savior. Ready, I replied. The town hall was packed. Over 1,000 employees from both companies, all anxious about their futures. I stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces. Change is never easy, I began. Trust me, I know. 3 years ago, I left everything I knew because I believed change was necessary. Today, we're not just merging two companies, we're merging two visions of the future. I saw my father and mother sitting in the back, William beside them. They were no longer the power brokers they once were, but maybe they could be something better. Family. Some of you know me as the rebel who left Chen International. Others know me as the founder of Logitech. Today, I'm both. And together, we're going to build something extraordinary. The applause was tentative at first, then grew stronger. Change was coming, and this time, everyone could feel its potential. That evening, as the sun set over Seattle, I stood in my office looking at the two buildings that were now both mine. My assistant brought in a package, my old nameplate from Chen International, saved by my mother all these years. I placed it beside my Logitech nameplate, a bridge between past and future. My phone buzzed with a text from William. I was wrong about you. We all were. Cocky sometime. I smiled as I typed back, tomorrow, I'll show you what the future looks like. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about transforming it into something better. I hadn't just proven my father wrong. I'd made his company stronger. I hadn't just succeeded. I created a legacy that honored both innovation and tradition. The watch on my wrist ticked steadily, marking time's inevitable march forward. Change would always come. The only choice was whether to fight it or lead it. I had chosen to lead, and now finally, my family was ready to follow. The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as I watched Marcus work the room, his perfect smile never wavering as he shook hands with Dallas's elite. My sister's husband had always been the picture of charm, but tonight something felt off. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut as I observed him from across the ballroom. My name is Emma Chen, and at 32, I've spent the last decade working as head of security for my father's charitable foundation. The annual Winter Gala was our biggest event of the year, bringing together wealthy donors who helped fund educational programs for underprivileged kids across Texas. This year, we expected to raise over $500,000, but something about Marcus's behavior had me on edge. The way he kept glancing at the security office door, how he seemed to be timing the guards' rotations. After 8 years in the family, I thought I knew my brother-in-law well. The successful investment banker who had swept my sister Sarah off her feet. The man who always had the perfect gift, the right words, the most expensive car. But lately, cracks had started to show in his perfect facade. 3 weeks ago, I'd overheard him arguing on the phone about gambling debts. Last week, Sarah had called me in tears because their joint account was suddenly empty. When she confronted Marcus, he blamed it on a banking error that would be fixed soon. But I knew better. Years of security work had taught me to trust my instincts, and right now, they were screaming that something was wrong. I adjusted my earpiece, scanning the room while trying to maintain a casual appearance. "Jake, what's your position?" I murmured to my head of security. "East entrance clear," he responded promptly. "All quiet so far." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. The foundation's office, where we would be securing tonight's donations, was down the hall from the main ballroom. We had state-of-the-art security, including cameras covering every angle. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. What no one knew, not even Jake, was that I'd installed additional hidden cameras throughout the building last week. Call it paranoia, but something told me we'd need them. I learned early in my career that sometimes the biggest threats come from those closest to you. The evening progressed smoothly at first. Donors wrote generous checks, gave inspiring speeches about the importance of education, and enjoyed the premium open bar. My father, James Chen, beamed with pride as he announced this year's fundraising goal. From across the room, I caught Sarah's eye. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked tired, worried. I made a mental note to check on her later. Around 10 p.m., I noticed Marcus slip away from the crowd. He'd been drinking heavily, but his movements were surprisingly steady as he made his way toward the hallway leading to the foundation's office. I touched my earpiece again. "Jake, I'm going to do a perimeter check. Keep an eye on the main entrance. I followed Marcus at a distance, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. He paused at the corner, looking both ways before continuing down the hall. My heart started racing. This was it. Whatever he was planning, it was happening now. To my shock, Marcus pulled out a key card and swiped it at the office door. The light turned green, and he slipped inside. How had he gotten access? Those cards were strictly controlled. I waited 30 seconds before approaching the door. Through the glass, I could see Marcus at the safe, entering numbers on the keypad. The safe that contained over $500,000 in donations from tonight's event. The safe whose code only 3 people knew: me, my father, and our head of accounting. My hand hovered over my phone, ready to call security. But something held me back. I needed to understand how deep this went. Who had helped him? How had he gotten the codes? The safe door swung open. Marcus worked quickly, stuffing stacks of cash into a black duffel bag he'd somehow smuggled in. His movements were practiced, efficient. This wasn't his first time doing something like this. I pushed open the door quietly, looking for something Marcus. He spun around, but instead of panic, his face showed only mild annoyance. "Emma," he said, zipping up the bag calmly. "I should have known you'd be watching." "Step away from the safe," I ordered, my voice steady despite my racing heart. He laughed, a cold sound that echoed in the small office. "Or what? You'll call security? Have me arrested at your father's charity event? Think about what that would do to Sarah, to your family's reputation." My jaw tightened. "Put the money back." "No," he said simply, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "You see, I need this money, and you're going to let me walk out of here." "Why would I do that?" His smile turned cruel. "Because if you don't, I'll tell everyone about your father's creative accounting. About how he's been inflating donation numbers for years to attract bigger donors. About the offshore accounts." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check the records. Your precious father isn't as clean as you think. Now step aside." My mind raced. Was he bluffing? I'd never seen anything suspicious in our books, but I didn't handle the financial side directly. Could my father really be involved in something illegal? Marcus moved toward the door, still wearing that smug smile. "No one will ever believe you anyway," he said as he passed me. The loving husband, the successful businessman, who would think I'd steal from charity? And if you try to prove it, I'll make sure your father's secrets come out too. I watched him walk away, my fists clenched at my sides. He thought he had won, thought he had me cornered. But Marcus had made one crucial mistake. He didn't know about my hidden cameras. I waited until his footsteps faded before pulling out my phone. With a few taps, I accessed the feed from the camera hidden in a corner of the office ceiling. The footage was crystal clear, Marcus entering the code, stealing the money, even his threat about my father. Everything. But I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. First, I needed to verify his claims about my father. If there was any truth to what Marcus said, this situation was far more complicated than simple theft. I closed the safe and left the office, my mind already forming a plan. Marcus thought he was untouchable, protected by family ties and threats of mutually assured destruction. He had no idea what was coming. Back in the ballroom, the party continued as if nothing had happened. Marcus had resumed his position by Sarah's side, laughing at something a donor was saying. Our eyes met across the room, and he raised his champagne glass in a mock toast. I forced a smile and turned away, touching my earpiece. "Jake, I need you to do something for me, but keep it quiet." The next morning, I sat in my home office, surrounded by financial records going back 5 years. I'd been up all night, combing through everything I could access. So far, I found nothing obvious, but Marcus's words kept echoing in my head. I needed to be certain. My phone buzzed, Sarah calling. I took a deep breath before answering. "Emma?" Her voice was shaky. "Something weird is going on. Marcus didn't come home last night, and this morning I found out all our accounts are empty. He's not answering his phone." I closed my eyes. Of course he'd run. "Sarah, there's something you need to know." "He's gone, isn't he?" she whispered. "Just like Dad always said he would be." "What do you mean?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Dad never trusted Marcus. He told me last year he suspected Marcus was embezzling from his own firm. But I didn't want to believe it. I thought Dad was just being overprotective. I sat up straighter. Sarah, what else did Dad say about Marcus? Just that he'd had him investigated when we first got engaged. That there were red flags, but I was so in love I wouldn't listen. She paused. Emma, how much did he take from the gala? $500,000, I said quietly. But that's not all. He said something about Dad, about offshore accounts. Don't, Sarah cut me off. Just don't. You don't want to pull that thread, Emma, trust me. The warning in her voice sent chills down my spine. What did my sister know that I didn't? I have to, I said firmly. This isn't just about the money anymore. If there's something going on with the foundation I need to know, then you better be prepared for what you might find, she replied. Because once you start looking, you can't unsee it. After hanging up, I stared at my computer screen, my finger hovering over the keyboard. Did I really want to dig deeper? Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe some secrets were better left buried. But I thought about all the kids who depended on our foundation's programs, about the donors who trusted us with their money, about my own integrity. I started typing. What I discovered over the next few hours made my blood run cold. Hidden beneath layers of legitimate charitable work, there were discrepancies. Small at first, easy to miss if you weren't looking closely, but they added up to a pattern that couldn't be ignored. My father, the man I'd admired my whole life, had been using the foundation to hide money, not just his own, but funds from wealthy donors who needed their cash to disappear for a while. The charitable programs were real, but they were also a cover for something much darker. And Marcus had known. Somehow, he figured it out and decided to use it to his advantage. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of this knowledge settle over me. I had evidence of two crimes now, Marcus's theft and my father's financial manipulation. The question was, what was I going to do about it? My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I know you have footage of me, but ask yourself, can you really expose me without exposing everything else? Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park. Come alone, or I release everything I have on your father to the press. I stared at the message, a plan already forming in my mind. Marcus thought he had the upper hand, but he'd underestimated me. Again. I touched the small camera pendant hanging around my neck, a gift from Jake last Christmas. For extra security, he'd said with a wink. It was time to put it to use. Tomorrow would be interesting. The next day dawned cold and clear, a typical Dallas winter morning. I arrived at Riverside Park 30 minutes early, scoping out the area while pretending to be just another jogger enjoying the trail. My camera pendant was recording, and Jake had positioned plainclothes security at strategic points around the park, out of sight but ready if needed. At exactly 2 p.m., Marcus strolled up to the bench where I sat, looking irritatingly confident for someone who'd just stolen $500,000. He wore expensive sunglasses and a leather jacket that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Emma, he said, sitting down beside me. I trust you came alone. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Where's the money, Marcus? He laughed. Safe. And that's where it's going to stay unless you want your father's dirty laundry aired in public. He pulled out his phone, showing me a screen full of documents. Everything's here. The fake donation records, the offshore accounts, even some interesting emails about tax evasion. One click, and it all goes to every major news outlet in Texas. You really think you've got it all figured out, don't you? I said, watching his face carefully. I know I do. Face it, Emma. You're not going to risk destroying your family's reputation over this. The foundation would collapse. All those underprivileged kids you pretend to care about, they'd lose everything. And for what? To catch one thief. I felt my anger rising but kept it in check. Those kids aren't pretend to me, Marcus. Unlike you, some of us actually care about more than just ourselves. Oh, spare me the moral high ground, he scoffed. Your whole family built their reputation on lies. At least I'm honest about who I am. And what's that? A coward who steals from charity and runs away in the middle of the night. How's Sarah doing, by the way? Have you even checked on your wife since you cleaned out your accounts? His smirk faltered slightly. Sarah will be fine. She's better off without me anyway. That's probably the first honest thing you've ever said. He stood up, adjusting his jacket. Look, here's how this is going to work. You're going to tell everyone the money was lost due to a banking error. In return, I keep your father's secrets. Everyone wins. Except the kids who need that money, I said quietly. Except Sarah, who trusted you. Except everyone who believed in you. That's their problem, not mine. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Emma, don't try to follow me. You're good at security, but I'm better at disappearing. I watched him walk away, counting steps in my head. 3, 2, 1. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Got him. GPS tracker planted when he sat down. Want us to move in? I smiled, typing back. Not yet. Let's see where he leads us. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in patience. Marcus led us on a winding trail across Dallas, making stops at storage units, safety deposit boxes, and finally to a private airstrip outside the city. He thought he was being careful, but every move was tracked, every conversation recorded. But I wasn't just tracking Marcus. I had another team quietly gathering evidence about my father's financial dealings. It was time to clean house completely. 3 days after our park meeting, I sat in my office, looking at 2 files on my computer. One contained everything on Marcus, the theft, the gambling debts, the evidence of previous frauds he committed. The other held proof of my father's years of financial manipulation. Sarah sat across from me, her eyes red but her voice steady. Do it, she said. All of it. Are you sure? Once I press send, there's no going back. For any of us. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Unsure. It's time for the truth. All of it. I took a deep breath and clicked send. 2 emails went out simultaneously, one to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the other to the Texas State Attorney's Office. Within hours, everything would change. The arrests were surprisingly quiet affairs. Marcus was picked up at the airstrip just as he was about to board a private plane to Mexico. The duffel bag of stolen cash was still in his possession. My father was arrested at his office, maintaining his dignity even as the handcuffs clicked shut. The press, of course, had a field day. CHRET Foundation in SCANDAL, KF and FRAUD XPOZ. Screamed the headlines. But there was another story emerging too, one about transparency and accountability, about doing the right thing even when it hurt. Sarah and I held a press conference a week later, announcing a complete restructuring of the foundation. New board members, new oversight committees, complete transparency in all financial dealings. We would rebuild, this time on a foundation of truth. Why did you do it? A reporter asked me. Why expose your own family? I thought about Marcus's smug smile in the park, about my father's years of deception, about all the people who had been hurt by their actions. Because some things are more important than family loyalty, I replied. Sometimes doing the right thing means being willing to lose everything to protect what matters most. 6 months later, I stood in front of a classroom full of kids at one of our after-school programs. Despite the scandal, despite the upheaval, we'd managed to keep these programs running. Different donors had stepped up, impressed by our commitment to transparency and change. Miss Emma, one of the kids asked, "Is it true your brother-in-law tried to steal from us?" I nodded. Yes, but he didn't succeed. Want to know why? They leaned forward eagerly. Because sometimes the people who think they're the smartest, the ones who think they can't get caught, are actually the easiest to stop. They get careless, they get overconfident, and most importantly, they underestimate the people around them. Marcus had been sentenced to 10 years for the theft and various other financial crimes they'd uncovered. My father got 5 years, reduced in exchange for helping expose a larger network of financial fraud among Dallas's elite. Sarah filed for divorce and threw herself into helping run the foundation. She was stronger than anyone had given her credit for, including herself. As for me, I kept doing what I'd always done, protecting what mattered, just with a clearer understanding of what that really meant. That evening, as I was leaving the classroom, I found Sarah waiting in the hallway. The new board approved our expansion proposal, she said, smiling. 3 new programs starting next month. I hugged her tightly. See, sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be rebuilt better. She pulled back, wiping away a tear. You know, when this all started, I thought losing Marcus would destroy me. I thought exposing Dad would be the end of everything. But look at us now. I looked around at the children's artwork decorating the walls, at the bright future we were building from the ashes of deceit. Yeah, I said softly. Look at us now. Later that night, I sat in my office, looking at the camera pendant that had helped expose Marcus's theft. Such a small thing to bring down such elaborate schemes. But then again, that's often how justice works, not in grand gestures, but in small, careful actions, and choices made when everything is on the line. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Security upgrades are complete. Nothing like this will ever happen again. I smiled, typing back, no, it won't. But if it does, we'll be ready. Because that's the thing about people like Marcus, there's always another one waiting to try their luck. But as long as there are also people willing to stand up, to risk everything for what's right, they'll never truly win. The foundation still bears my family name, but it stands for something different now. Something true, and in the end, that's worth more than all the money Marcus tried to steal, more than all the secrets my father tried to hide. Sometimes the biggest victories come not from what we gain, but from what we're willing to lose. From the courage to say no, this isn't right, even when it costs us everything we thought we needed. I looked out my office window at the Dallas skyline, thinking about how different everything was from a year ago. How different I was. Marcus had been right about one thing. Once you start looking, he can't unsee the truth. But he'd been wronged about what that meant. Sometimes seeing clearly is exactly what we need, even when it hurts. The light on my desk blinked. Another donation coming in. Another chance to do things right. I smiled and got back to work.